Not the ones who gossip or guess. I mean the ones who feel the tension in a room before a word is spoken. The ones who sense the lie hidden inside a smile. Society calls it intuition, even a gift. But here's the truth. It's not always a blessing. Sometimes seeing too clearly is the most painful curse you can carry, because once your eyes open to what people hide, you can't close them again. And that clarity, it doesn't set you free. It isolates you. Point 1. The isolation of seeing too much. You start by thinking you're gifted, and end by realizing you're alone, because the moment you see the truth, the world stops looking back at you the same way. It usually begins quietly. You don't even realize it's happening. You walk into a room and your mind starts reading between the lines. A glance that lasts a little too long, a laugh that sounds forced, a word said with just enough tension to reveal what's beneath it. At first it feels like a superpower. You can sense the truth others miss. You know who's faking their smile, who's secretly angry, who's slowly falling apart behind their practiced calm. But with time, that gift starts to feel heavier. Because once you start seeing beneath the surface, you realize how much pretending the world depends on. You notice that almost every conversation is a performance. Everyone's wearing a mask, smiling, nodding, saying "I'm fine" when their eyes tell another story. And suddenly small talk isn't small anymore. You feel the emptiness behind it. That's where the first danger begins. Isolation through awareness. You start drifting away from people, not because you don't care, but because you can't unsee the lies that hold social life together. You can't laugh at fake jokes. You can't nod along when you sense hypocrisy. You can't sit in the middle of a crowd pretending you don't feel the anxiety pulsing through them. And slowly your world grows quieter. People sense something about you too. Your gaze makes them uneasy. It's like your eyes speak the truth their mouth is trying to hide. They might not say it, but they feel it. That subtle discomfort. That feeling of being seen through, so they start to pull back. They'll call you too intense. They'll say, "You overthink everything." They'll laugh and tell you to just relax, but what they really mean is, "Stop seeing me so clearly. It scares me." And you try. You try to blend back in, to go back to not noticing. But you can't. Once the curtain is pulled back, the play doesn't look the same. You're the only one in the room who knows it's an act, and it's exhausting to keep pretending you don't. That's the quiet loneliness that comes with awareness. Not from lack of company, but from living in a different reality altogether. Everyone's dancing on the surface, and you're sinking under the weight of what's true. You start questioning yourself. Why can't I just be normal? Why can't I just laugh, just enjoy? Just stop feeling everything so deeply. But deep down you know, it's because your mind doesn't allow lies anymore. It's tuned to truth, and truth is a lonely frequency. You begin craving what you once escaped, ignorance, because ignorance lets you belong. It lets you love without analyzing, trust without reading too deeply, exist without thinking about why. But that door is closed now. You can't go back. You can only learn to live differently, to make peace with seeing too much, and that's where the real battle begins. Not outside you, but inside. Because once your awareness separates you from others, you'll have to decide, will you curse it? Or will you learn to carry it in silence? Point 2, the price of speaking truth. They say the truth will set you free. What they don't tell you is that it usually sets everyone else against you first. If point 1 was about seeing too much, this one is about what happens when you dare to speak what you see. At first, you think truth will bring understanding. You imagine people will thank you for your honesty, respect you for your clarity, but you soon learn something brutal. Most people don't want truth. They want comfort. Society runs on shared illusions, soft lies that keep the peace. Everyone agrees silently not to dig too deep. You say, "I'm fine," and I pretend to believe it. You act happy, I act convinced. It's a quiet contract that keeps relationships smooth, but then someone like you breaks that agreement. You speak up, you point out what's real. You say, "This doesn't feel right," or "Something's wrong here," and the moment you do, the atmosphere shifts. Faces tighten, smiles falter. Suddenly you become the problem, not the truth you pointed out. That's the paradox of truth-telling. The one who names the lie is always mistaken for the liar. You can watch it happen in real time. In a meeting, you question the fake optimism, and people start looking away. At a family dinner, you mention the tension nobody talks about. Silence. Someone quickly changes the subject. Another laughs too loudly. You can almost hear the walls go up. It's not malice. It's defense. Because truth has gravity. It pulls away the masks that people cling to, and that feels like death to the ego. When you speak what others fear to see, they'll fight you. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right too soon. They'll call you negative, dramatic, paranoid. They'll say, you're reading too much into things. But what they really mean is, you're breaking my illusion and I can't handle it. And the saddest part? You start believing them. You start to question your own perception. You wonder, maybe I really am too sensitive. Maybe I am overreacting. So you start silencing yourself. You begin swallowing your truth one piece at a time. You laugh when you want to cry. You nod when you want to scream. And for a while that silence feels peaceful. The tension fades. People like you again, but inside something begins to rot. Because every time you betray what you see, every time you pretend not to notice what your intuition screams, you cut yourself a little more from your own soul. That's the real danger. Self-betrayal disguised as harmony. And here's the trap most fall into. You start thinking that maybe, if you explain better, if you say it softly enough, if you choose your words with care, they'll finally understand. But truth isn't rejected because of tone. It's rejected because of timing. You can't wake someone who still wants to dream. There's a psychology behind this too. It's called cognitive dissonance. When reality clashes with a person's belief system, their mind does anything to protect the belief, even if it means attacking the messenger. That's why you'll always notice this pattern. The clearer you speak, the harder they resist. So you start learning silence, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because you realize truth doesn't always need to be spoken aloud. Sometimes it's enough that you know. You stop trying to convince, to fix, to make them see. You begin to understand that truth isn't a weapon, it's a mirror. And not everyone is ready to see their reflection, but this kind of restraint is hard. Because once you've seen behind the curtain, it hurts to watch others pretend. You want to shake them awake. You want to help. But you can't force awareness, not without destroying connection. So you learn the art of quiet truth. You carry your clarity inside you like fire, warm enough to light your way, but not so wild it burns others. And here's the strange gift hiding in the pain. Once you stop needing others to validate what you see, you start to own your perception. You realize you don't need their agreement to be right. You don't need their comfort to stay clear. Truth-tellers walk a lonely path, but it's the only path that leads to integrity. And though it costs you people, it gives you something far rarer, self-trust. Because when the world tells you to shut your eyes and smile, and you still choose to see, you've already won the hardest war. Point 3. When they make you the villain for seeing too much. You never set out to be the villain. You just noticed too much, said too little, and somehow your truth became their threat. By now you've learned to see clearly and sometimes to stay quiet. But clarity has its own gravity. It changes the energy in every room you enter. People feel it. They don't understand it, but they sense it. You know things they don't say. And when people feel seen before they're ready, they don't thank you for it. They protect themselves. And often the easiest way to protect a lie is to blame the truth-teller. It doesn't happen overnight. It's subtle at first. A friend stops calling. Someone's tone changes. You start getting labeled. Too serious, too sensitive, too negative. But here's the quiet reality. These labels are weapons of defense. When you see clearly, you shine light on the shadows that others depend on to survive. And the human mind doesn't like exposure. So it flips the story. You become the unstable one, the cold one, the difficult one. The narrative twists until your clarity looks like cruelty, your awareness looks like arrogance, and your truth looks like an attack. That's what I call the mirror effect. When you see deeply into others, you become their mirror. And not everyone likes their reflection. So instead of cleaning the mirror, they break it. Because it's easier to shatter you than to face themselves. It's an old story, really. The person who sees the rot beneath the surface always becomes the villain in the eyes of the comfortable. In workplaces, they're the toxic employee. In families, they're the troublemaker. In relationships, they're the one who ruins the peace. But think about that word, peace. If peace only exists because everyone's pretending, is it really peace? Or just denial wearing perfume? Here's where the third danger truly begins. You start internalizing their projection, because being misunderstood again and again starts to wear you down. You start wondering, maybe I am too much. Maybe I really do create the problems I see. You question your own perception, not because it's wrong, but because you've been punished for it. And that's how self-doubt grows inside a truth-teller. Not from lack of clarity, but from lack of acceptance. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're standing in a dark room with a candle. Everyone else is comfortable in the dark. They've adjusted their eyes to it. And suddenly you light that candle. They flinch. They cover their eyes. They shout, "Why would you do that? It hurts." But the candle isn't the problem. The darkness is. That's what your awareness does to people. It reveals what their eyes aren't ready for, and so they project their discomfort onto you. They need you to be wrong so they can stay comfortable. They can't face the truth, so they attack the one who speaks it. This is known in psychology as shooting the messenger. The one who carries the truth gets punished for delivering it. It happens in workplaces, in families, in love. The more accurate your perception, the more you threaten the collective illusion. But here's the heartbreaking part. Once you've been turned into the villain often enough, you start to isolate by choice. You stop sharing your insights, not out of wisdom, but out of exhaustion. You start playing smaller, dimming yourself down just to avoid the backlash. That's how bright minds go quiet. Not because they lost clarity, but because the world taught them it's safer to stay unseen, and yet, deep inside, you know you were never wrong. You were simply early. You saw the collapse before it happened. You sensed the lies before they broke. You recognized the patterns before anyone else could name them. Truth-tellers are always ahead of their time, and that's what makes them dangerous. But here's where you take your power back. The moment you realize that being the villain in someone else's story doesn't make you wrong, it makes you free. Because their version of you says more about their fears than your faults. You stop needing to explain yourself. You stop defending your perception. You start recognizing projection when it happens. And instead of reacting, you just observe. That's when the whole dynamic flips. You no longer absorb their blame. You reflect it back silently. You no longer let their denial define your reality. You stay calm, grounded, and clear, while their illusion trembles. And that's the quiet power of awareness. Once you stop trying to be understood, your truth becomes unshakable. Let them call you the villain. Let them turn away. History has never been kind to those who spoke the truth before it was popular. But every broken mirror still reflects light. And in time, they'll see that you weren't their enemy. You were the only one who saw them honestly. Point 4. When awareness turns into emotional overload. Seeing too much doesn't just hurt your mind, it starts to drain your soul. Because when you can feel what everyone hides, there's no place left to rest. By the time you reach this stage, awareness isn't just something you have. It's something that owns you. You don't just see what people think. You feel what they don't say. Every glance, every pause, every fake smile, it lands heavy on your chest. At first, it seems like empathy. You tell yourself, I just understand people deeply. But soon it starts to feel like a curse. Because being emotionally aware means you pick up pain that doesn't belong to you. You walk into a room and instantly sense tension. Someone says, I'm fine, but your body knows they're not. You can't unsee it, can't unfeel it. You start carrying other people's storms like they're your own weather. That's what happens when awareness goes unguarded. It turns into emotional absorption. You become a sponge for other people's chaos. And here's the dark truth. People love that kind of person. They'll pour everything into you. Their sadness, their secrets, their guilt. Because you listen without judgment. But while they feel lighter, you walk away heavier. You start confusing compassion with responsibility. You think, if I can see their pain, maybe I'm supposed to fix it. And that's how your awareness becomes a trap. Because empathy without boundaries isn't love. It's self-erasure. You start losing track of where you end and where others begin. You cry and don't know why. You feel anxious after a conversation that wasn't even about you. You start mistaking other people's emotions for your own. It's like standing in the rain so long. You forget it's not your storm. This is the stage where many emotionally intelligent people start breaking down, not because they lack strength, but because they've mistaken sensitivity for duty. They think seeing pain means they owe it healing. But here's something psychology teaches us. Mirroring is automatic. Our brains are wired to feel what we see. It's part of survival. But if you don't regulate that mirror, if you don't learn to let emotions pass through you instead of into you, you end up living inside everyone else's trauma. And the irony? People start depending on you for stability, while you secretly fall apart. You become the calm one, the understanding one, the one who always listens, but no one asks. Who listens to you? Because you've become so good at hiding your own exhaustion that they mistake your silence for peace. Slowly, your empathy starts mutating into resentment. You begin to feel angry at how much others take, but also guilty for feeling angry. That guilt keeps you trapped. You keep giving, keep absorbing until you don't even recognize yourself. Your laughter sounds like someone else's echo. Your thoughts feel foggy. You can't tell if your sadness belongs to you or someone you just spent time with. This is what's known as emotional enmeshment, when boundaries blur so deeply that other people's energy becomes your reality. And it's one of the most dangerous outcomes of heightened awareness, because when you live constantly tuned into others, you lose the frequency of yourself. So what do? You start by remembering this. Empathy isn't meant to be possession. It's meant to be connection. You can witness someone's pain without owning it. You can understand someone's darkness without entering it. This is where emotional detachment becomes sacred, not coldness, but clarity. It's the ability to stand beside someone in their storm and still know where your feet are planted. It's saying, I see you, but I won't drown with you. That's not heartless. That's healthy. Because you can't save anyone if you're sinking too. The people who truly love you won't need you to bleed for their healing. They'll want you to stay grounded, because your strength gives them hope. But some won't like your boundaries. They'll call you distant, selfish, not the same anymore, because your exhaustion once benefited them. Let them talk. You've earned your peace. When awareness is balanced with boundaries, it becomes wisdom. Without them, it becomes suffering disguised as kindness. So when you start feeling too much, stop trying to numb it. Instead, filter it. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? Did I create this emotion or did I catch it? Those two questions alone can save you from drowning in other people's oceans. Because being awake doesn't mean you have to absorb everything you notice. Sometimes awareness means knowing what not to hold. And maybe that's the final stage of maturity, learning that it's okay to care deeply, without collapsing under the weight of it. You can be kind and still guarded. You can be understanding and still distant. You can see everything and still choose what deserves your energy. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Point 5. Turning awareness into power. The rise after the ruin. Once you've seen the world without its mask, you can never go back. But if you learn to stand in that truth without breaking, you become untouchable. This is the final stage. The moment awareness stops being a burden and becomes your weapon. After everything you've endured, seeing too much, being blamed for it, absorbing pain that wasn't yours, something shifts. You stop wishing to be blind again, because now you realize awareness was never the curse. It was your lack of control over it. This is where you start learning how to own your perception instead of drowning in it. At first, awareness felt like chaos. Too many signals, too much noise. But when you survive it long enough, that chaos starts to form patterns. You start to see connections that others can't. People's words stop confusing you. You understand what drives them, what scares them, what they hide. That's the beginning of quiet power, when your insight becomes precision. Now, instead of reacting to what you see, you start choosing your responses. You no longer try to prove your truth. You use it strategically. You know when to speak and when to stay silent. You know how to read the energy in a room and adjust without losing yourself. This is the phase where your awareness becomes emotional intelligence, real emotional intelligence. Not the fake be kind to everyone version. It's the kind that understands human nature, the light and the dark. You realize people aren't evil for lying or hiding. They're just afraid. Afraid of being seen, afraid of losing control, afraid that if they admit what's real, everything will fall apart. And you've already fallen apart. You've already faced that collapse. That's why nothing scares you anymore. That's your power. When you no longer fear truth in yourself or others, you become the most stable person in any situation. You can walk through conflict without panic. You can listen to anger without absorbing it. You can look at manipulation and see it for what it is. An act of fear disguised as control. This calmness confuses people. They don't understand how you stay centered when they try to shake you. But it's simple. You've seen behind the illusion. You no longer need the performance. And here's the real transformation. Instead of resenting your awareness, you start using it to create peace. Not the fake peace that comes from silence, the kind that comes from clarity. You start building relationships where honesty feels safe. You surround yourself with people who can handle being seen. Because now you know, connection isn't built on pretending, it's built on truth. Your energy changes too. You're no longer chasing validation, approval, or understanding. You're observing, choosing, allowing. When someone lies, you don't rage. You just think they're not ready yet. When someone withdraws, you don't chase. You just step back knowing space is data. When someone tries to manipulate, you don't fight. You pivot. You watch. You learn. You've become what most people secretly crave but fear to be, unshakably aware. You understand now that darkness isn't something to avoid. It's something to integrate. Because awareness without acceptance is torment. But awareness with acceptance is wisdom. You stop dividing people into good and bad. You start seeing them as unhealed or conscious. You stop demanding perfect behavior. You just look for intention. And in that lens, life becomes lighter. You can walk through chaos and remain untouched because you've learned how to let it pass through you. Even your loneliness changes. It no longer feels like exile. It feels like sovereignty. You enjoy your own company. You understand silence as power, not punishment. That's the beauty of full awareness. It gives you back control. Not control over others, but mastery over your inner world. Because the truth is, people will keep lying. They'll keep pretending. They'll keep hiding behind their illusions. But you won't. You'll walk through it all with your eyes open, your heart grounded, and your peace intact. You'll know that understanding the darkness doesn't make you dark. It makes you real. You'll start to see that awareness isn't about seeing through others anymore. It's about seeing yourself clearly enough that no one can rewrite your story again. And that's the full circle, from pain to perception, from seeing too much to owning what you see, from being haunted by truth to being guided by it. Now, when you walk into a room, people will still feel that same energy, that silent depth that once isolated you. But this time it won't be heavy. It'll be grounding, because you'll finally understand what that energy really is. Peace that has seen war and survived it. That's awareness transformed into power. When you stop wishing for blindness and start mastering your sight. Closing. In the end, seeing clearly isn't about being special. It's about carrying truth without letting it crush you. Most people spend their lives running from what's real. You just stopped running. You learned to hold the darkness, to look it in the eye and still choose peace. And maybe that's the quiet miracle of it all. Not that you see what others don't, but that you can see it and stay human anyway. Because clarity isn't cold, it's courage. And in a world built on pretending, that makes you the rarest kind of alive.